California Congressman Kevin Kiley. Congressman, it's not just, it would be one thing if California wants to tax the people who live there, who choose to live there, to death. But California is wasting and allowing federal taxpayer money to be stolen. And they want to act like that's not what has been going on. But I noticed that online that you responded to something that the governor was saying about money that was stolen from the original tranche of the COVID aid. And they acted like, oh, well, we implemented these fraud controls. No, they didn't. And this money, it was tens of billions of dollars that was stolen from federal taxpayers.
Well, that's exactly right. $32 billion in fraud for unemployment during COVID. No other state was even close. And yes, the federal government did advise that the state take basic fraud protection measures, and Newsom ignored that. He failed to do it, and our taxpayers suffered as a result. And by the way, this audit that just came in showed that the number of high-risk agencies in California has doubled during Gavin Newsom's tenure. It's gone from 4 to 8. And that statement you just read from him where he said, oh, this is just meant to drive corrective action. Actually, you only get that designation if the agency has failed to take corrective steps. And so, you know, with no offense to Hochul in New York or Pritzker in Illinois or Waltz in Minnesota, but Gavin Newsom is the undisputed fraud king of the United States. California is America's fraud capital with the amount of money that gets wasted every day in this state.
Well, specifically on health care, you know, Medicaid, Medi-Cal, or all of the various government agencies that are involved in distributing medicine, that's supposed to be the payer of last resort. The private sector is supposed to be where you first go. But the fraudsters, that is the first place they go because they know it's so easy to rip off the government, right?
Oh, exactly. And that's what the audit found when it came to Medicaid determinations, when it came to SNAP determinations. It's rife with improper payments. That doesn't include, by the way, the $10 billion the state has spent this year on free Medicaid for those who are in the state illegally.
They coming for you, Callie. They coming for you. The federal government doesn't have to subsidize what the federal government deems as being illegal. And they shouldn't. Just like with what took place with the daycare centers and the child care in Minnesota, the federal government doesn't have to subsidize it. And that is the thing that we forget. We think that the federal government is obligated to do that because you're here. No. If they deem it and they see that it's fraud, they need to put things in place for checks and balances, but more importantly, cut it off.
Right. And it also doesn't include the $24 billion that the state lost in homelessness spending. It doesn't include the $17 or $18 billion that has been spent on a high-speed train without any track getting laid. So this is why, over 5 years of having Gavin Newsom as governor,
this is the high-speed train one. That's the one that drives me crazy.
We have seen our budget grow by $124 billion, and yet everything in California has continued to get worse.
I just want to note before we move on, Congressman, that California passed a no asset test for Medi-Cal, Medicaid. That if you were elderly, that rich people in the state are still dumping their elderly relatives onto Medi-Cal. There was no asset test, none. Like you could have insurmountable amount of like stocks, home wealth, and they've had to rescind it starting January 1 of 2026 because it was such a disaster.
So what she's saying is that nobody's verified some of the people that go on to some of these government programs in California, to the point that some of the people have money, but they're still on that government program. Clearly, they don't qualify for it. I'm like, go for them too. Which to me points out how devious and demonic California has been. I'm sorry. If you're from Cali, I'm not saying that you are, but the people you put into office, they definitely are. I've always had this belief when I listen to Gavin Newsom speak that he's paid for, and I don't believe by locally. I don't believe it's locally, meaning I don't think it's some entity in the United States paying for that guy. It's got to be some foreign entity that's putting money in his pocket. He's been more concerned with being a rock star governor and famous than he's been fixing any issues. Even with the Palisades and the fire that took place, Gavin Newsom just disappeared. We know right now that in California, insurance companies have left in droves, and they're not going back. They're not going back to Cali. So Cali is one of the places you don't want to buy in. This is one of the places you don't want to own in. If you own real estate in California, I really pray for you right now. I'm sorry for you. If you can't sell it and leave, that's a bad place to be in. You can always come to Georgia. You get a whole lot more for your money. Okay. But Cali's going to be the next one on a chopping block. Don't think that they're going to get away with it. Don't think that the Trump administration has forgotten about that. I believe they're taking care of what's happening in Minnesota, but California getting federal funds is soon going to become a thing of the past.
Well, under Gavin Newsom, that is a very familiar story. And now the latest proposal is they want to,
or at the very least, very hard to come upon,
impose a wealth tax on billionaires, which is going to just send people leaving California and will cause our state's entire financial structure to collapse. And again, even if it worked as intended and brought in billions more dollars, that would just at the end of the day be more opportunity for fraudsters.
Well, and the thing about the wealth tax is, first of all, capital can move. You're not forced to live in California. You can leave if you're being taxed to death, and that's exactly what's happened. Whether it's a country that has a wealth tax, that's why most of those countries in Europe that used it got rid of it very quickly, or whether it's a state, and you're still experiencing that exodus, the tax exodus from your state, right?
Exactly. And this has been very precisely measured in terms of how much revenue California has had to give up because of people leaving. In fact, for 4 straight years in California, we led the nation in outbound U-Haul rentals. California's population continued to grow since 1850. It was only with Gavin Newsom as governor that it began to decline. And here's the important thing to note is that in California, the top 1% of earners can account for up to 50% of tax revenue. And so when you send those folks out of the state, then that can actually cause our entire financial setup to collapse. It's one of the reasons California has been running these.
Wow. So the top 1%, let's repeat that. So we're crystal clear on what they're planning on doing.
Those folks out of the state, then that can actually cause our entire financial setup to collapse. Led the nation in outbound U-Haul rentals. California's population continued to grow since 1850. It was only with Gavin Newsom as governor that it began to decline. And here's the important thing to note is that in California, the top 1% of earners can account for up to 50% of tax revenue. And so when you send those folks out of the
and that's the problem. Like, they're creating issues for us. They're creating issues for the United States. They're creating issues for every last resident of California. You're like, dude, this is how you become just like Chicago. Like, Chicago has that issue right now where they're trying to find this budget money, and that means they're raising property taxes. I think upwards of about 135% was the last report that I saw, affecting Lincoln Heights and some of those other places. Where you push money out, when you are mad at money and you're mad at business, you're mad at capitalism, you're mad at consumer capitalism, and when you push and you attack it and they have to leave, you don't incentivize them to stay. It becomes harder for people to buy homes, to build families in a place where they're taxed crazy. Like if they're taxed. That's why Georgia has grown the way that it is. Georgia has sensible taxing, whether people like it or not. And it's incentivized up until this whole play with the movie industry to move to where overseas, has incentivized businesses coming to Georgia. Cali's not like that. Cali believes because they are Cali and the weather's good, that they can tax these people in order to make them stay because of good weather.
Oh no.
You do the math for yourself. Leave a comment if you feel what I'm saying is off the wall. But I believe that's the fastest way to now end up taking your state into bankruptcy. But you guys are electing these guys in office, so you get what you get right now.